What's up, guys? Welcome to Q&A with a Flayer, Part 2, March 2019. And why Part 2, you might ask? Why not just have all of it in one? Well, it's because I'm disorganized. I just missed a question and didn't realize it till I was already in the uploading process, so here it is. Here's the question I missed. My apologies. It is from Joseph Cheney. And Joseph says, I am on a Discord server that is pushing the idea of running Walking Ballista as a one-of for those matches that go wide, go long, or otherwise have gummed up board states. What are your thoughts, boss? Well, interesting question. So Walking Ballista, this is a card that can be utilized very, very well in some decks. Glaring example of this, obvious example, is Tron. Tron players make 1+1+1 = 7, right? So they can just cast this thing and it's gigantic. They can sink even more mana into it over the course of some turns, and this allows them to have both board control and a finisher all wrapped up into one terrifyingly efficient package. Walking Ballista in Hardened Scales Affinity is another really good example of a deck where it synergizes well with the namesake card. So you're cheating it out ahead of curve, ahead of how it was quote-unquote designed to be used, whether you're using Tron lands to do it or whether you're synergizing it alongside Hardened Scales. So those things, of course, are the ceiling of the card. The card's got a very high ceiling in those decks. It's also got an acceptably high floor because, you know, if you're playing it out on turn 2 just as a 1/1, it can still kill, for instance, a Dark Confidant. It can still be basically a Doomblade for that Dark Confidant. So those decks can both benefit from that floor of the card as well. If they're not really firing on all cylinders and they need to take care of a problematic X1, the Walking Ballista can do that too. So the card is very, very powerful in those shells. Needless to say, it is not as powerful in our shell, and to be fair, Joseph is not suggesting that it is. Joseph is not saying Walking Ballista is the new best card in BG Rock. He's saying, what about it as a one-of for specific matches that go wide, go long, or have gummed up board states? So what do we think about that? Well, you know, there's a lot to like about that. There's a lot to like about it. It is a very flexible card. It is a very powerful card, even if it's not at its best in our shell. And it does have a little bit of synergy with Tarmogoyf specifically. If we use it as a removal spell, basically, it goes to the graveyard. Artifact is an uncommon type. It can grow the Goyf. So there are some good things about this card, no question about it. However, let's try to game out some realistic scenarios for it. So if it's a gummed up board state, if the ground is clogged up, that means that we probably have a hefty threat on field. It means that we definitely have a hefty threat on field by definition, actually, right? If it's a stalemate, so we've got a big Tarmogoyf, or we've got a big Skooz, or Tracker, or Kalitas. Now, a Walking Ballista, even if we cast it with 6 mana, which, that's a lot, you know? The games go long, but we don't necessarily always get beyond 4 or 5 mana on curve, even if the game's going long. So even if we have 6 mana to sink into a Walking Ballista, it's still only a 3/3, so it's not exactly gunning down big creatures that are holding off our big creatures, right? Now, of course, it can make blocking awkward for the opponent. All that's true, you know, it's definitely not just a matter of can it kill something on sight. But do note that kind of by definition, if the ground is clogged up, the Walking Ballista is probably not going to take over the game. Now, if it's clogged up with a bunch of weenies, that can be a different story. It can, you know, maybe come down as a 2/2 and kill one of them, and then maybe over the course of several turns we can sink some more mana into it. It can be pretty good. Here's the thing, though. I personally am playing 2 Liliana the Last Hope in my 75, so we've got the ability to, in a much more efficient way, repeatedly kill X1s. It's less conditional, it's more efficient, and it doesn't require repeated mana sinks, and it advances a win condition in and of itself. Liliana taking up to 7 is a win condition. So we have Fatal Pushes, we have all the spot removal, we have Pulse, we have Trophy, we have Decay, we have other cards like Deathmark and Damnation and Engineered Explosives out of the side. So, Walking Ballista, to me, it's a nice flexible card, but it doesn't repeatedly mow down X1s as well as something like Liliana the Last Hope. It does not cleanly answer things as well as our spot removal does, and it does not have the same X for 1 potential as Pulse, EE, Damnation. On top of all that, it is a very underwhelming threat if you compare it as like a 2-2 for 4 compared to the rate of like a 4-5 on average for 2 from Tarmogoyf or any of our other threats. It is very, very underwhelming. So it's not as good at any one thing as cards that are already in our 75. Now, does the flexibility make up for that? It's an open question. It's an interesting question. And to be fair, I am consistently surprised at just how powerful this card is in basically any deck that runs it. So it is possible that I'm underrating this, but at the end of the day, I would still say no. I would still say it's not quite there. It doesn't quite do enough for us. You know, it's a little bit of a jack of all trades, but we already are a deck that kind of already does that about as much as you can justify doing so in Modern. With all of these flexible cards, like Scavenging Ooze, that sometimes is a life gain machine, sometimes is a grave hate machine, sometimes is just a grizzly bear, sometimes is like a 4-4 beater, you know, with cards like Maelstrom Pulse, with cards like Liliana of the Veil. These are all kind of flex cards that have powerful ceilings, powerful floors, and kind of, you know, Collective Brutality is another one. They're whatever we need them to be in the moment. However, there is such a thing as playing too many of those cards and just not having the raw power to really be ruthless and close out a game, right? So, in my opinion, Walking Ballista, I see the merit of it. I agree with all of your points, Joseph, but I think it just ultimately falls a little bit shy, just a little bit shy of where we need it to be to make a spot in our 75. Now, if anybody has any countervailing suggestions to this, I'm all ears. If you want to show me a list that you think is a good shell for it, I'm all ears. But you know the other benefit I'll mention quickly, Walking Ballista is a monosync, right? It is something that you can play on curve and then later, as Flood Insurance, use it as a monosync. But, you know, we already play so many monosyncs. We play Scavenging Ooze, Tireless Tracker, Kalidas Trader of Get, Treetop Village, Field of Ruin, Hissing Quagmire. We have so many monosyncs. Again, it kind of fits the bill for our deck, but I don't necessarily think we need more of that than we already have. There is such a thing as being too dirtily, as being too, you know, flex-oriented, what-if-oriented. That's why we still play the card Tarmogoyf, right? Because sometimes we just need a really efficient rate on our card that just is going to be good in and of itself, standalone threats that can end the game, right? And so, you know, I see the merits of Walking Ballista. Ultimately, I say no. I say I don't think it quite fits the bill. However, if you are going to try it, I think Joseph's suggestion as a one-of, with these types of board states and these types of matches in mind, is the way to do it. So if anyone has any experience with that or feedback on my theorizing here, please let me know. And yeah, that wraps up part 2 of the Q&A. Sorry I missed this for part 1, but we were not as organized as we could be, but we'll be more organized next time, right? So anyway, thanks again for watching, everybody. Check out part 1 of the Q&A if you missed that, and stay tuned to the channel. We've got League gameplay coming up for you in the next day or two. So take it easy. Thanks for the question, Joseph, and I hope everyone out there has a great day.